And something people really need to be reminded of is that being annoying isn't a crime. I know it's tough to remember that sometimes. It's tough to remember that, but it's not a crime. It's not a crime. You know, it is a crime. Poisoning everybody to death. So if you recognize this movie I'm holding up, you know something about weird Barbie movies, okay? This one, Barbie Island Princess. That's an interesting. Barbie as the Island Princess? My apologies. But I'm just gonna call it Barbie Island Princess. I hope y'all don't mind. Nevertheless, the thing about Barbie Island Princess, when I hear discourse these days online, is that they hate Tika. They don't like Tika. They don't like Tika. So, for those who have not seen Barbie Island Princess in a while, Rosella, as a child, was shipwrecked onto this island and was taken care of by a peacock and a red panda. Along the way came a baby elephant, Tika, which I have already stated many do not like. And we'll get into that today. That's the purpose of this video. Now, just a little recall of the rest of the plot. This man named Antonio, he is a prince and he is an explorer. Okay? I was gonna say the Christopher Columbus, but honestly, I don't like that reference. I don't like that reference. He comes over, he's like, wait, you're like me. What are you doing on this island? Right? Because remember, Barbie, blonde hair, blue eyes, shipwrecked on an island. A little weird because she's talking to the animals there, right? She's got her crew, the peacock, the baby elephant, and the red panda, right? I don't really understand how they exist in that same particular ecosystem, but we have to really just put the reality out the window because that is the joy of a Barbie movie at the end of the day. He comes over and is like, you know what? Let me take you back to my land. Okay. She says, well, my crew's going to come with me. They go on the ship back to his land, right? He is a prince. And on the way back to land, they are singing a song how they like each other, right? Mind y'all, they just met, right? It's kind of like Cinderella, like 10 minutes ago, I bet you. Why did I need to sing that? I don't know, but you're welcome. That wasn't even. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, it wasn't even good. Like I can't say. I wish I could watch Brandy's Cinderella right now, everybody. Nevertheless, they are for some reason in love at first sight, and they go back, and he's like, "Wait, I want to introduce you to my dad," right? And dad's like, by the way, you need to, this exploring shit, like, you gotta stop with that because you gotta get serious because you're about to become a king. By the way, already picked out your wife, okay? Luciana, she's a sweetheart. She's a girl's girl, okay? Nothing against Luciana, but he doesn't want to marry her. He wants to marry Ro. He wants to marry Ro, okay? Because he just met her and decided she was the one. Picked her up on an island. You know what? We can't even get into the real insanity when you really look at the plot line of Barbie Island Princess. Like, that is a conversation for another day. Nevertheless, the thing about Luciana, like I said, sweetheart, she's so nice. Her mom, a crazy bitch. A crazy bitch. I'm sorry, I think I'm allowed to say that. Because back in the day, her family wanted to take this guy out, and obviously they were unsuccessful. She was sent to the pig farm. Uh, Queen Ariana, which is Luciana's mom's name, married an old guy who was about to kick the bucket so she could get all of his riches in his kingdom, right? So now the daughter trying to get her married off, and she does not like anybody, right? And here's the thing, she's threatened by Ro. Ro is nice. She, mind you, the whole time, she's not even wearing shoes. Because at the island, she didn't need to wear shoes. But I'm just like, we offered Ro so many other things, and I'm surprised we didn't offer her a pair of shoes. But nevertheless, it's animation. We can do what we want here. And eventually, Queen Ariana decides that, well, obviously, clearly, Ro is a threat to, this wedding that's supposed to happen with my daughter, Luciana. So we are going to try to discredit Ro in any way we can. Now remember, she has brought over a baby elephant, a peacock, and a red panda who she can talk to. Ro can talk to animals. She just has this magical power. No one else can talk to animals. Now the kingdom, they do have a royal monkey, okay? And she's cool. She's cool. But everyone's like, okay, why are you talking to my monkey? Like, what are y'all even talking about, mind you? Um, and I just want to say this because they have a beloved animal, right, in the house, in the castle, okay? So Ariana says, I am going to poison the animals, okay? So not only the animals on the royal farm, right? But also the monkey. So poor Tallulah, okay, is really just damage in this whole, plan that Queen Ariana has to basically take over the kingdom, because she is a crazy mother, and she's like, basically, if Luciana marries this guy, I control Luciana, okay? So first, like I said, she poisons all the animals, right? Including Tallulah, beloved Tallulah, right? So they're like, oh my god, how do we save Tallulah? Now, what does Queen Ariana do? Which I say, there's a lot of conversation outside of my point about Tika today that we could have about this movie. So, who do we know who's new to the environment that could have introduced this animal sickness? Okay, well, Ro and her crew of animals, right? The island girl came here and she brought her diseases with her. Now, what does that sound like to you guys? Are you guys reading between the lines here? This is interesting to watch through a blonde girl's perspective, because Ro is blonde, mind you. Now, take that all in mind. Think about that. Think about that. Rewatch that movie and think about it through that lens. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. So Ro's like, clearly, this is what the issue is, right? So they lock up Ro. They want her sent back to the island. And she's like, I could literally help make a cure. I just need to get a flower from the island. But they want to lock her up. They want to send her back. Queen Ariana pays the guy who's gonna drive the ship, back to the island, says, like, listen, just like shipwreck them at some point, like kick them off, right? They get thrown off the boat, but that's okay. The dolphins saved them. They made it to the island. They got the antidote flower, right? So she could make that. They get back to the mainland. How? Probably the dolphins again. The dolphins always help out in these movies. They really do. At the end of the day, Ro is just there to make sure that the animals are cured, because she loves the animals. She grew up, she was raised by animals, okay? And also, mind you, at some point, the peacock, he ate food that had this poison on it, so he was also at risk as well, okay? Queen Ariana is telling Luciana, do not eat on your wedding day. Because Ariana said, before anybody gets cold feet, let's rush this wedding. Let's rush this wedding. So Luciana's like, why the fuck would my mom tell me not to eat on my wedding day, right? They find out from a little birdie, literally a little birdie told me that Queen Ariana poured that poison on the wedding cake, right? So not only did we poison the entirety of the kingdom animals, right? Uh, but also we were going to poison the wedding party. And you must know, without the antidote, what happens? You die. So she was Queen Ariana was gonna commit mass murder, essentially, so that once Luciana was married, guess what? She would be able to rule over Luciana and tell her what to do. And then she wouldn't have anybody to tell her no, right? So I just had to lay out that big part of the story before we get back to, well, where does Tika play into this story? Where does Tika play into the story? Because Marissa, I haven't heard you mention Tika yet. Oh, I'm gonna get there. So before, in the midst of all this going down, what happens is, obviously Antonio was like, I don't want to marry Luciana, okay? And Luciana knows I don't like her, so she doesn't want to marry me either, right? We're in a conundrum here at the end of the day. And he leaves a note to Ro that Tika overhears him writing, like, if you get this note, meet me here at this time and we'll sail away together, right? We're gonna have a runaway. I want to write Prince at the end of the day. And Tika's like, whoa, you're not taking away my Ro. Now I want everyone to remember here, she is a baby elephant. I'm not here to say that she should have stole the note, but she is a baby elephant, right? What we need to know about Ro is that she is basically kind of like Tika's mother or sister, however you want to consider it. She is a caretaker of Tika, right? Because Tika, the only elephant on the island. Which I thought it was interesting when Tika went to the mainland, she was like, there's no one here like me, but there also was no one there like her on the island, because she was part of the story. She was a shipwrecked elephant onto the island, okay? So they're one and the same, okay? They're like this. They're like this. We should note that. I almost forgot that bit. So The thing about Ro and Tika is Tika, she has really bad anxiety. I mean, any elephant who has been separated from her family, you imagine, would have anxiety. And Ro always sings her to sleep, okay? So they have this really deep connection. And Tika is a baby and she's seeing someone like, oh my God, this man is going to take Ro away. We're never going to see her again. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Right? Because I want to remind everybody she's a little elephant. She's not a full grown elephant, okay? So she's a child, essentially, right? And in her storyline, we learn that there is love to grow everywhere, right? So Tika steals the snow. Eventually, obviously the prince got the message because Rhodes didn't come meet with him, but he didn't know that she didn't get the note. Now, this is not something that really is groundbreaking to the story, right? In a way that you have heard this type of storyline before where it goes much bigger, right? It's blown up way more than it was in Barbie and the Princess, right? This is just like he still has respect for her, but he is not acting in any sort of way that really altered the plot because she didn't come around and go sail away with him if she had gotten the note, right? Like this was not a big plot line, right? So later on, when Tika comes clean that she did steal the note, and this is what it said. Rose sings to Tika, everybody is born to care. It's something we were meant to share, not to keep to ourselves all alone. If we make room for someone new, doesn't mean that there's less for you. Only means that our circle has grown. Love knows love grows, okay? This is a lesson because you forget this is a children's movie, okay? I know we all love going back to our childhood movies, right? I mean, I was in middle school when this came out, so I didn't really remember this one when I first rewatched it, but I think I've seen it before. But nevertheless, you forget this is a children's movie, and we are all adults watching this through an adult lens and things that we know, not thinking about who is the audience of this movie. Children. Children, right? So this is a beautiful lesson to learn, whether it's a new spouse going into your parents' life, whether it is a new little brother and sister into your family, right? Just because someone else is here and some of the attention is going to be taken away, or they feel like they might be abandoned, you know, doesn't mean that there is not love for everyone, right? And this is honestly tracks for the way a child thinks, right? And that is why we learn this lesson in this Barbie movie at the end of the day, right? Tika learns this lesson that there is love for everyone and I am not going to abandon you just because a new person is in my life, right? So when I hear Tika is the real villain, a Barbie Island princess, I go, no, no, I'm sorry. I fully reject that. We can haha he he about it all day because we're talking about a fictional elephant here. But like, no, you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're wrong. And it's not about being wrong or right, but it's just like, who was the real villain? Tika, who a child who was afraid she was gonna lose someone that was her family and had to learn the lesson that love grows, there's room for everyone, I wasn't gonna abandon you, or the woman who was gonna commit mass murder. I mean, guys, come on. And when we have a society that was trying to say Sharpay Evans was never the villain, right? We forget we are not really thinking here, right? I know we're not really stopping, dropping, and rolling to really think what is going on in this movie. Is Tika a villain? No. Are you allowed to find her annoying? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can. I feel no type of way about Tika. I don't. I am coming to her defense. I am her defense attorney. Okay? Okay? Okay. Thank you. And something people really need to be reminded of is that being annoying isn't a crime. I know it's tough to remember that sometimes. It's tough to remember that, but it's not a crime. It's not a crime. You know, it is a crime. Poisoning everybody to death and poisoning people, period. Like, right? Like, that's, you can't legally do that. Maybe in Barbie's Kingdom you can, but, certainly not in real life. So, lock her up. Lock Queen Ariana up. The fact that we are saying fuck Tika, this is the sentiment I've heard on TikTok. I was truly shocked. I was shocked when I watched the movie, right? Knowing that I have seen all this discourse about Tika, right? I'm like, wow, like I'm expecting worse things, honestly. And I watched it and I went, okay, like maybe she's a little annoying, but she's a kid. who wants, I don't know, her mom. Like I said, Ro was kind of like a mom to her or a sister to her, family to her at the very least. I am not seeing what everybody is seeing. And like I said, you are allowed to find Tika annoying, but that is not it's not a crime to be annoying. It isn't. It isn't. We're missing the purpose of this movie, okay? We are missing the purpose of this movie. What I like to do is relate this silly commentary we see to the real world and how we think, because that is so fun, right? The thing about Barbie movies is, as silly as far-fetched as some of them are, like, there is something to take from them, right? Like I said, something that Queen Ariana says when she is confronted about putting the poison on the wedding cake. She says, "How dare she interrupt the wedding? This wild girl and her animals are spreading disease. They're dangerous," right? And I was saying earlier, like, you should really think about that. This is a very interesting story to look at from the perspective of how we view people from other places and the rhetoric that is used against them, right? This is an interesting movie, especially because Barbie's blonde hair, blue eyes, right? So we're watching this from you know, what would be societally accepted way to look, right? When we're watching this story through that. And that is so interesting. So you can really take anything from a movie and relate it to the real world. Whether that was the intention or not of the writers of Barbie Island Princess is neither here nor there. It is just a fun way to relate the things we watch to connect them to how they work in the real world, right? Like, everything informs us of how we view society, right? Even made up universes, right? Where we have a baby elephant with eyelashes for days. Honestly, I wish I had Chica's eyelashes. They don't talk about that enough. We have a confident peacock. I imagine, see, it's always the male ones. What does a female peacock look like? I wanna see a peacock, cock, cock, yeah, peacock. Um, okay, well, yeah, we know the men are prettier. I almost feel better about the men having to perform for the women, in the animal kingdom, because imagine if that was the real world. You know what I mean? They just gotta spread their wings big and impress the ladies. Interesting, interesting. They just look like a peacock without all the, feathers. They got feathers too, but just not as interesting as the male ones, because they gotta impress. They gotta impress. And that's really neither here nor there. That was just a tangent. Now, what the fuck was I talking about? Me going, what does a female peacock look like? Actually, I already knew that information, but sometimes you forget. You're like, wait, they don't have all the jazz that the men do, obviously. Wow. You see what I mean? And that is kind of like, when like the joke that men get the pretty eyelashes and then we have to like get the mascara or get the falsies or whatever. Like, that's kind of the same vibe. Anyway, that's really not relevant to my purpose here of what I was talking about, Barbie Island Princess, but I really got on a tangent because I thought about the peacock. Um right, right, right. So the one thing I wanted to bring up when it comes to Barbie Island Princess and why it is so funny that people have more hate for Tika than they do for Queen Ariana, who was literally gonna murder everybody, right, by poison. Nonetheless, guys, gonna poison everybody, animals, people of the wedding party, you name it. She was gonna poison everybody. Okay, that's crazy. That's crazy. Is how can we relate this to our impatience for children and our how we view mistakes, right? Because when I was growing up, and I don't know if it is just like this day and age, or maybe children who didn't grow up watching Hannah Montana, like this era of Disney Channel that I was raised on, in the early 2000s. But like, everything is very either or. Like, you do this one thing and you are horrible, you are written off, right? And we are not talking about poisoning people like Ariana, right? We are not talking about things like prejudice, etc., etc., that are inherently the wrong thing to be doing, point blank, period, right? We are talking about everyday things, right? Something like Tika stealing the note because she was afraid that Ro would abandon her and that she had to learn a lesson that love does grow and there's room for everybody in this family, right? We are looking at things like that and assigning it this big moral value without remembering you were once a child too. Whether or not you would have done the same thing as Tika as a child is neither here nor there, right? But the Hannah Montana of it all, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days, okay? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody gets that way. okay? Sometimes you feel like when you just can't seem to win, if things don't turn out the way you planned, figure something else out. Don't stay down. Try again, okay? You can do anything and be better and rethink things, and just you're allowed to make mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn. Mistakes are how children learn, right? So to be upset at about all of this and cite it such a big moral value is so funny to me. And I don't, like I said, I see this. I wonder if it's because children didn't grow up with this same like Disney Channel era, because the era I was in Disney, as I've just recited to you for Hannah Montana. I'm sorry, I did have to look up the other half of it. I did kind of forget it. And I do still listen to Hannah Montana. She is my regular rotation, but I want to make sure I had it right. And that is just my full transparency, okay? Nobody's perfect. I gotta work it. I know in time I'll find a way. Nobody's perfect. You live and you learn it. Because everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. When we had these shows, like this type of music, encouraging us to really follow our dreams, if something goes wrong, it's okay. Trust yourself to learn and make a mistake and figure things out, right? Like, this is the vibes from Disney, from Nickelodeon, even like iCarly, right? Like, she started her own web show, right? Like, these are the vibes that we were getting at a young age, right? And I wonder, because when you're young, like, you're not listening to Nobody's Perfect and really thinking like that is impactful. But as an adult, you're like, wow, these lyrics, like, wow, they have a lot of meaning. Like, I'm listening to this as an adult and I'm like, exactly. Exactly. Hey, Hannah Montana was right about that. She absolutely was. Right? And that is so funny. So I can't say all that has contributed to people being in this very either or mindset when it comes to like mistakes that people make throughout their life. Like I said, very normal, average mistakes. We're not talking about big ones and obvious ones, right? But it is so interesting that we don't have patience for children to make those mistakes, right? No one is right off the bat, right? Ask anyone. What were they like in middle school? Like, were you a perfect child? Like, I was a good child, but was I a perfect child? No. I don't think anyone was. Like, you know what I mean? And I mean that in a way that it's just like, you live and you learn, right? Like, hello, how did you form your thoughts? How did you learn where you stand on it? Like, you live and learn, you read through experience, through people telling you, like, hello? Like, did we forget how we formed to be our beings? Like, it's almost so funny. So yes, I am in defense of Tika. It's not that serious in the way that I'm not saying it's not that deep, but I'm just saying in the way that it's like we're talking about an animated Barbie movie. And Tika stole a note. Oh my god, God forbid Tika stole a note one time. Oh my gosh, guys, like, I don't know. I just feel like people have done worse in movies and stuff, and I'm surprised that like that does not translate in other ways. Like, I don't think it should, but it's just funny, right? And the thing about like movies and stuff like that is so interesting is, even when we're talking about like real villains, okay, like Queen Ariana, right? Like, you don't ever hear think pieces about them. You don't, and not in the way that like they're so wrong. I can't believe they did that. Like, she was not in the right. Da-da-da. And it's like, okay, like, it's a master villain. Like, what did you expect? You know what I mean? Like, you don't hear that, but we hear that about Tika, who's just making a mistake as a baby elephant, right? And she made it right. She came clean, and they learned a lesson together. For the children to see this and learn the lesson, right? That love grows. Something we have to remember is that we are adults, right? We have all these insights that as a child watching a movie, you just don't, right? Were you watching Shark Tale and as a child commenting, wow, this really spoke to the status quo of maybe masculinity and how men feel the pressure to perform a certain way and how that affects how they act and how they view themselves? Da, 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 da. Were you writing that think piece as a child when you were watching Shark Tale? No. No, but you can watch it and see the fun of it all play out through a children's movie, right? And it's not that we like directly absorb and have these things spelled out for us as a child, right? But when you are an adult and you learn about the way these things affect us, like, you can think back, oh, I remember that movie where this happened. I go, oh, isn't that so funny that that was like actually proving the point, right? And that is the amazing thing about movies and TV shows, right? Like, they were playing this out for us to watch for a reason, right? And whether that was intended or not, is really neither here nor there because we watch it nonetheless. And, the things we write inform us about how we view society. Even the most fictional things, right, have those little glimpses of that in there. And it is just so interesting to hear the discourse, obviously, now. Like, this is a movie from 2007 and it is 2026, right? Almost a decade later. And this is what people talk about. It is so interesting. But, like, guys, children, they live and they learn, okay? And sometimes they're brats, and that's not a crime. And it's not a crime. Not everyone who has made a mistake is a villain, right? And that is a great question to ask yourself. At what point does that make someone a villain, right? At what point is doing something quote unquote deemable wrong, right? Or deemable wrong, not the right thing, however you want to word it, makes you a problem, right? And the thing is, Tika learned her lesson. And I always think it's interesting because when it comes to how we could make what people want Tika to be, the villain, into the movie itself. If she was like fucking with Antonio and pranking him and trying to sabotage them getting together, like that would have been really funny. And that is something you have probably seen in a movie before. Like, I didn't pull that out of nowhere, guys. Like, it's just like when you watch media, you know how it plays out in the movies, right? This is not a unique storyline by any means. But we never saw any of that, right? She was just like, oh my God, no, I don't want him to take her away. And that was just kind of the vibe. And there really wasn't anything more to that. I wish there was more to the story, so I could understand what the hell people were talking about. But that's why I bring this thing up. Like, our ability to understand that, like, hey guys, you don't have to like them. You can find her annoying, but once again, being annoying is not a crime, okay? But Tika, not the villain of Barbie Island Princess, okay? Order in the court. Tika is not the villain of Barbie Island Princess. Queen Ariana, who was gonna try to murder everybody, is in fact the villain, not Tika, okay? Court adjourned. Bring in the dancing lobsters.